I want to address some feedback I received over the weekend. I got an email from a listener who shared some of his thoughts on me potentially editing the show. And so today, before this one with Eric, I'm going to read his email. I'm going to share then some of the feedback I've received from you as I posted this email. I took out his name, but I posted the email on all of my social media over the weekend. And then I'm going to share my thoughts on it as well as what we're going to do moving forward. Okay, here is the email I received. It said, Ryan, I know you stated that you don't edit out language because you want to keep it authentic. It is my belief that one who can't or won't control his tongue or temper likely has other issues that reflect on his character. In many professional settings, such language may constitute a hostile work environment. It would reflect poorly on my character and could result in punitive action for someone I might share it with. As a result, I review each show carefully before sharing, and I can't recommend anyone follow your podcast, though I have not found anything better in your space. A recent podcast with a set of repeated F-bombs was likely one of the best, but rendered useless. You have every right to do you. I have to do me. I thought you would like to know. Again, I posted this email on Instagram stories, my Instagram stories, and posted a quick ask. Should I edit out language of the podcast? Yes or no? I also posted this on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. I wanted to get a wide variety of responses and gather what you, loyal listeners, think of this. And I'm also genuinely curious just to kind of see your thoughts. So first, I'll cover the results of my poll on Instagram, as well as some of the other comments I shared. Some of the ones were public and some were private. If public, I'll share names. If private, I will not, because all of my social media is public for anybody to see. So first, the results of the poll on Instagram. My Instagram handle is at RyanHawk12. 84% of people voted no. Do not edit the authentic language used on the podcast. 16% said, yes, I should. I also got a number of direct messages from you who shared a lot of emotion behind this. I was surprised. I wasn't quite sure. When I got this email, it was a very early Saturday morning. I was at a volleyball tournament out of town. I'm in a hotel working out in the gym. Thought, let me just post this and see what people think. I'm curious. I was a bit surprised at the amount of emotion, the number of F-bombs I received in the DMs as how they felt for this person who sent the email was interesting. And I thought, well, it's worth addressing because this is feedback and I'm trying to learn. I mean, I'm trying to live out the values of being a learning leader. So it does seem the majority of you want me to continue not editing out language on the show as I've done for a very long time. Now, I want to share more of the thoughts from you, some of your comments to my social media posts, as well as my thoughts, and then share what we'll do moving forward. A few comments. Nate Waldron, who I respect and has followed my show, I know, for a long time based on his emails and comments. Nate said, I choose not to listen to those episodes that are marked explicit. I should have said before, if Apple Podcasts, you do need to mark when you're going to upload them. I use Libsyn as my podcast hosting provider. When I upload it into Libsyn, I do mark an E for explicit if there is any of the language that is mentioned in this email that I received. So I do mark them E, and you can clearly see that when you're looking at the podcast. And it sounds like in this case, Nate chooses not to listen to those episodes that are marked explicit. Tyler Dickerhoof said, I've been on his podcast before. He said, I believe, and I know he works closely with John Maxwell, I believe I would have never had the opportunity to build a close mentoring relationship with John Maxwell if I used certain words as a part of my regular language. I would prefer people edit and look deeper into their heart to communicate rather than use words deemed offensive because, quote, that's who they are. Next, Dave Brixey, somebody worked with for years and certainly respect. He said, Ryan, I feel this is a you decision based on your values. If it were me, I would edit it as I find it offensive, unnecessary, and a mark of poor character and intellect. Not a popular opinion, I'm sure, but one I'm entitled to. Next, my good friend, former teammate Calvin Big Circus Blackman. I played with Calvin at Miami University. He was one of my receivers. He said, quote, I mean, it's year 8. And in the words of Lil Wayne, if it ain't broke, don't break it. Thank you, Calvin, for adding some levity, but a good quote too. Amy Grubb, friend of mine who works at the FBI, was at my Learning Leader Growth Summit in 2022. She said, having been, quote, raised by wolves where I work, I hardly notice harsh language, but also I totally get that is not everyone's jam. I doubt any guest comes on with the intent to shock and turn off listeners. Next one is from my good friend Matt Hine. I've been friends with him for a long time. He said, after all, they're only words. We decide the power we give them. In one of my group chats, I will keep this name private because it is a private message. He said, the world is wild. Resistance. If you don't like it, create your own. The doers are busy doing. And I'll share one more. This came from Kelly Kell. She said, quote, I think there's a big difference between expletives being used as adjectives or as weapons. If directed at people, yeah, I can see how it would be taken as triggering and hostile. But if it's an adjective, then I don't think it carries the same damage / impact. I intentionally shared Kelly's note last because I think she makes a fantastic point. To me, I have never been offended by the use of F-bombs or any other language like that, especially when they're used as adjectives. Now, if they're used to name call or to be hateful, I think that's different. And I do think there's an issue, whether you're using that language or not, with trying to be mean-spirited and put people down. I don't think that's a good thing to do, obviously. But when this language, when F-bombs and similar words are used as adjectives within the regular course of conversation, I have never, and I can't imagine a day that I would ever be offended by that. And quite frankly, I don't understand why someone would be offended by an F-bomb. But I'm genuinely open to change my mind, and I'm curious to hear from you. This is not a rhetorical question. If you are offended by someone who uses F-bombs, send me an email, ryan@learningleader.com, and tell me why. Why are these words offensive? Because at this point, I don't get that point of view. Again, I'm open to changing my mind. I'm curious to see it from all perspectives. I want to hear that. Maybe something happened in your life that makes those words triggering. I don't know. In my life, I was brought up, in fact, in a home with parents who rarely, if ever, used that language. I was also brought up in the world of playing sports. And from a young age up through my time in high school, college, and playing professionally, I had coaches and teammates where it was a regular part of how we talked. The coaches to us, the teammates, the locker room, all of that was just how we talked. It's not like you become numb to it. It's just the way conversation flows. And I don't think it really gets in the way of anything. And I rarely found, if ever, I can think of a person who was offended by that. Maybe, but I don't recall. But I thought, as I transitioned out of the world of being an athlete into the professional space, into the corporate America, my thinking was, well, this will probably change. I would imagine that language, it will not be used. And then I got into corporate America, and I may have initially been a bit surprised, but I found that the use of that language is very common. I work with leaders in all different size of companies and all different industries from multiple countries all over the world, whether they're CEOs, they're mid-level managers, they're running a professional sports team, they own their own business, they're a SVP at a Fortune 100 company. All those types of people have been clients of mine. I advise them, I work with them, I go to a lot of their meetings. In fact, I just was in a senior leadership meeting yesterday afternoon. I would say there was probably 20 to 30 F-bombs dropped within that 2-hour meeting, and it did not get in the way. Nobody stopped to say they were offended. It didn't seem like any of them were, because there was a wide variety of people using that language. It was just normal. And so out in the world, it feels to me like this is how people talk. So that leads me to the decision that we've made moving forward, and that is we will not edit the language used by the leaders that come on my show. When I meet with them prior to us recording, I tell them I want it to feel like there are two people having lunch together, genuinely curious about one another, trying to get to know each other and hearing fantastic stories that hopefully will help both of us, and that the listener gets to eavesdrop, and really they're the ones sitting next to us having that conversation. That's what I want it to feel like. So moving forward, I will continue to tell my guests to be themselves, to be authentic, to be real, to be genuine. And if that's how they talk, then I'm great with it. If they don't use that language, I'm great with it. I don't really care. I just want them to show up as themselves and authentically be genuine, not try to be a different person or not try to perform for the microphone, but just to be themselves. So moving forward, we will not edit the language of podcast guests. I will not tell them to alter their language. I will just tell them, as I always have, be yourself. For those of you who are offended by that or skip those episodes that are marked with an E, or will not refer those episodes to others, I'm genuinely bummed by that. I am. I wish you would. I think there are so many good episodes marked with an E that you are missing out on. I truly do. I would ask you to reconsider that thought, and also to ask yourself, why are you offended by F-bombs and language like that? Maybe you have a good reason, and if so, I'm all ears to hear it. But I would ask you to reconsider skipping those episodes, because I think there's some really good ones. So moving forward, we will not edit language. We will continue as is. Thank you very much for your concern. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any feedback, as always, send me an email, ryan@learningleader.com.